This is the Horse Radio Network.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Wood.
And I'm Jennifer Connor.
From Equestrian Businesswomen, and you're listening to Equestrian B2B, the podcast that brings together industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and equestrians for conversations about how they build and sustain a successful business.
On today's show, we are talking to Christine Rolando, a longtime equine appraiser, about what it takes to be an appraiser, when to call one, and how she has developed her business over the past 40 years.
Christine Rolando is the CEO of Signa Equine Appraisals. She has been a renowned certified equine appraiser in New York and beyond for more than 4 decades. With her business, Christine started appraising horses in 1980 and has dealt with every difficult appraisal scenario possible, from IRS audits to divorce and international litigation and court settlements. Christine has also become one of the first ever in the United States to appraise frozen semen and frozen embryos. She has helped to place thousands of horses for donors and is very familiar with the tax process for situations like university riding teams, rescues, and therapeutic centers. For 10 years, she served as the executive director of one of the first therapeutic horse centers in the United States.
Christine is the host of Horse Sense Radio podcast, and for 3 years hosted Horse Sense on live radio in the New York metropolitan area. She also was the host of the non-for-profit Notebook for many years. Christine has been a speaker at the Arabian Youth Nationals, Equifest, and the American Horse Council National Convention. Christine has owned and operated her own show barn, has bred top show horses, and has instructed both children and adults throughout her career. Christine currently works with the Blue Arrow Farm Horse Rescue in Pine Island, New York, and Home for Good Dog Rescue in Berkeley Heights, New Jersey, both not-for-profits helping to rescue horses and dogs from kill pens and shelters and providing them happy, loving, forever homes.
Are you an industry professional who has thought about writing a book? Bookending your business enhances credibility and creates powerful marketing opportunities. In-Course Publishing can bring your expertise to the printed page. As a hybrid publishing company, we partner with our authors through editing, designing, printing, and distribution. Don't leave opportunity on the shelf. Bookend your business today and let us bring your book into the unique arena of the equestrian market. Visit our website, incoursepublishing.com, to download a free PDF to help get you started.
Hi, Christine. It's really great to have you on today. It's been a while since we've chatted, but I've always enjoyed our talks when I was on your radio show a couple of times. And I thought you'd be a great guest to talk about the business that you have and how you've grown it. And, if you can give some advice to our listeners.
Well, I'm very, very excited to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to your listeners. And again, like you just said, just let's catch up a little bit. So any advice if someone's interested in being an equine appraiser, or if they have a reason to, need an equine appraiser, hopefully I can answer those questions for you today.
Yeah. So let's get started. And can you tell us about the equine appraisal business and how you got started in it?
Yeah, so I did have a show barn way back when, and I had a bank come to me and say, we have 2 horses, and these 2 horses are actually the collateral on a loan. The loan was about $250,000, and they were 2 horses that were way back in those days. Those horses were, extremely high priced, especially during that market. They were Arabian horses, and they needed the appraisal done on those horses because they actually took them back. So I thought to myself, okay, how do I do this? I didn't really know how to do it, but I knew it had, because I had a little interest in real estate, I said there has to be a place for comparables. So I started to look at the sales and go to sales myself at Scottsdale and different Arabian horse sales, so I could start putting comparables together. So that's how I got initially started. And there wasn't at that point, there was not I'll call it like an agency, like in the real estate market, you can go to the courthouse and you can pull up comparables. So I just started always, even as a child, I was always interested in why a horse costs so much. So I literally had this box, and my box was filled with prices of horses and all. So I started to build my own little comparable database, and it went from there. I did meet a man. His name is Jay Prost, and Jay I actually talked to him the other day. I spoke with him way back then. This is 1980, believe it or not, when I did my first appraisal.
Wow.
Yeah, a long time ago, like ages ago. I was a young kid.
Did you have to have a license for that before you started doing it?
So what I wanted to share with you is when I had found this fellow, Jay Prost, he was in the beginning stages of making, I'll call it standards for becoming an appraiser. So there were no standards. So we kind of collaborated. I actually went to one of his very first classes. I flew out to Idaho and we had to physically be there. And at that time, I not only got certified as an equine appraiser, believe it or not, I'm a tractor appraiser. So I knew nothing about tractors growing up close to New York City, but I learned an awful lot about tractors as well to appraise tractors. So it's really an ag appraisal. So we kind of worked on building some standards in the industry. We have a code of ethics, and that was really the piece that got me. You know, I wanted so much to be a part of this, but I wanted our code of ethics to really be something that was responsible and that people would live up to in the horse industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like it's sorely needed in a lot of places.
Well, you girls know you can put 10 horse people in a room and you're going to get 10 different opinions possibly. So,
Absolutely.
So, in the appraisal business, we want to maintain a high standard of professionalism and really adhere to those, to the code of ethics and morals that, are so important. I had an opportunity to speak a long time ago as well. It was the 25th anniversary of the American Horse Council in Washington, D.C., and I was just one of the speakers. I have to be honest, I was scared to death because I walked into this room and there were hundreds of people, but it was the racehorse industry. It was all industries, but very, very heavily, attended by racehorse industry. And here I'm this young kid talking about the truth and being fair. And, I listened to the recording the other day and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is like amazing that I, had the nerve to stand up and say this to all these men in suits. But it was really, really a kind of an interesting time, but that's how I got started in that industry.
Wow, that's really cool. So after you got started, what does your business model look like? How did you grow your business?
Well, I knew how to grow my physical horse business. I did have 65 horses in training and buying and selling and all that. And it was a big operation, but I really didn't know. We didn't have the internet, we didn't have the internet like we have now. So we didn't have the World Wide Web. So it was pretty much a paper, basically business cards and paper pamphlets that you would go to, I remember going to the Cherry Hill racetrack and speaking there. I was one of their speakers, and that was Black Friday. And I'll never forget, no one was listening to me because the market crashed and they were all interested in the stock market crash. But, to build your business back then, you had to literally, like we still do now, but we didn't have the internet. So it was the model was about getting out and telling people that what you're doing, go to Equine affairs, conferences, and pretty much word of mouth. I do a lot of repeat business through the years.
Okay. And are there many women appraisers in the field now?
So I asked Jay that the other day because when we first started, there were probably close to, I'm going to say upward of maybe 4,000. And now the numbers have shrunk and there's only 400 worldwide that are certified. Yeah, it's only 400 and 2/3 are women. 2/3 are actually women. And basically most of them do it part-time initially.
And what do you think attributes to the number shrinking so much?
I'm not sure. And I honestly, I asked Jay that. I don't really participate in that, building the building the society of appraisers. I focus pretty much on my own business. through the years, I have had people call me up and say they're thinking about becoming an equine appraiser. Is it lucrative? Can I make a full-time job out of it? People always ask me that through the years. But most people, as I said earlier, most people do it part-time. And I'm not sure why it slowed down. And maybe because Jay is actually out in the Midwest, and he told me that he's very busy with so many other cases himself, because he does some of the appraisal work himself in the reining world. So perhaps that's it, but I'm only speculating.
Yeah. And with as strong as the equine market is right now, have you seen the need for appraising go up?
I'm busy as ever. I mean, I have so many cases now, and if it ever gets slow for me, all I have to do is plan a trip for a vacation, and then also my phone rings, and I get a phone call and says, "Listen, we have a court case, and we need you to blah 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 look at this case." And I always say, when is the deadline? And they'll say, because, sometimes I've literally had people call me up and say, we're going to trial on Wednesday. And the judge may have told them, 4 months ago to find an appraiser, and they didn't do it. So, I always ask that question. What's the deadline? I have a case coming up in September. The attorney just emailed me and said, can you do this on the 13th of September? And this has been lingering for probably over a year. So it's right around the corner. But I did speak with the initial, the woman who's actually hiring me. She and I did speak earlier, so we had an inclination that it was going to be in September. So I did a lot of prep work prior to, so I am actually ready.
How long does it take you to get ready for a case?
Oh, it depends. I mean, I've done cases where, 40 horses died in a fire. And that could take a long time because of the fact you don't have the physical horse. You have to do way more research. And, it just depends. Like, I do a lot of work for universities. I do a lot of work for, like, if someone was to make a donation and they want they're going to make a gift of this horse, that's an asset. So I do a lot of tax work, and those I pretty much have down to a science, because I have a system in place and I've been doing it so long, and I have the comparables. I think the hardest thing when you get started is the comparables, because you two know, in the horse industry, if you ask, well, if you're not the one who's purchasing the horse, it's very, very hard to find out what this horse might be selling for, unless it's, of course, a thoroughbred or standardbred at a public sale.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine, because everybody prices their horses in different categories, I mean, I have a pony that I'd like to sell right now, and I have a number on her, and I can't get her sold. And I see other horses of probably lesser quality or lesser ability, and I'm like, what's wrong?
Yeah, it could just be, maybe it's just the right person hasn't come along yet, or I mean, you never know. You never know with horses. It's like when you buy, they're high, and when you sell, they're low. And I honestly, I've done horses upward of millions of dollars. And it's very interesting when I always ask for the bill of sale. That's why I think I've been successful in this, because if I have to go to trial or sit across from an attorney who's cross-examining, I have the experience and the proof, because I have so many bill of sales.
Wow.
And so many sample bill of sales or sample lease agreements. I mean, it'll blow your mind of what a horse can cost for a lease these days.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Totally. Sure. Yeah. And how does somebody become qualified to be an appraiser? Like, what's the certification process?
So the certification process is, it's actually, you can do it online now. You used to have to go physically, and you have to get referrals. You have to go through the course. There is a course. You have to take the full course, and there's different levels of certification. So you can become, when you start out, I mean, I have to be honest, I've had people call me and say, listen, I don't know anything about a horse, but I love dogs. And I'm like, oh, that's a long journey to take.
Yeah.
So I'd say the first thing is that you have to be passionate about it, because it's not easy work. People think it's easy, and it's, I love it, but it's not necessarily easy because especially if you're involved with something that is in litigation, so back to your question about getting certified, you have to go through the American Society Equine Appraisers, and you can go through the course, and then you have to take a test, and you do a lot of hands-on from the standpoint of writing your reports and turning them in, so they can kind of look over the reports and make sure that you're following, like I said, the code of ethics. And we follow something called USPAPs. USPAP is the standard of the professionals appraisers. So those rules, you need to know those rules. It's a lot of rules that in the USPAP piece of it. So you have to go through that course as well.
Wow. And you mentioned something about taxes. Do you have to know tax code or be versed in that kind of stuff?
I would say that you're going to be better at being an appraiser because, I'll have people, I'll give you an example. I had a Grand Prix rider call me up 2 weeks ago, and she said, okay, I have this horse and I donated this horse to a university. So it's very important. I said to her, she said, do I really have to get a certified appraiser, Mike? And I said, well, I would recommend to call your accountant, but I'm going to tell you the tax law says that if a gift is over $5,000, yes, you need a certified appraiser. So you need to have that because, you're telling me you paid X amount upward of, let's say, it was way over $5,000. So it behooves you to know the tax law. I mean, I've been involved in not-for-profit work for 30 years as well as a therapeutic riding director. And, you're dealing with donors. So you do need to know. It's not that it's a standard that you must, but it's definitely to your advantage because, again, if someone's going to donate a horse to, I have a lot of horses go to Texas A&M to the foundation. You really need to know those rules and how a foundation is able to accept a gift.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned before that people do it part-time. Is that in this day and age, what I'm thinking is there's a lot of amateurs out there who are looking to make some extra money on the side to support their riding habits. So is this an avenue that keeps them up to par with being an amateur, but it's something that could bring in extra income and doing part-time?
If they're serious, if they're willing to really, dig deep and do it as a professional. But I have also, about 6 months ago, I did an appraisal, and what happened was it was a malpractice suit. Horse died. And the other side, basically, I always say is there, who's the client, because you got to make sure there's no conflict of interest. So there are serious rules and guidelines that you have to do it. So, can you do it part-time? Yes, but you really have to dig deep and know what you're doing. I'll say that. You got to dig deep and know what you're doing. And back to, when we did that case, the other appraisal, my report was 36 pages long, filled with comparables. I always treat every case as though I'm going to be sitting across from a judge or I'm going to get cross-examined by the IRS. I mean, I've worked for the IRS and I've worked on the other side for clients getting audited by the IRS. So you can do it part-time, but you really have to be serious about learning what you're doing and doing it correctly. Because the last thing I would want to happen is, if I was the client, which happened in this case, the other appraiser, it was one piece of paper that came in and it had no comparables and it didn't stand up because it had typos in it. Yeah. So it wasn't good for that client who hired that appraiser.
And so I know you've mentioned donating a horse to a team or if you lose a horse, maybe for insurance purposes, you need an appraisal. What are some other situations that a horse owner would seek out an appraiser?
Well, it's unfortunate, but I do a lot of divorce cases. And someday I'm going to write a book about those stories because those are stories I'm really shot at. I've been said, okay, there they are in the field and it's pouring down rain. I'm like, hello, I really need someone to show me they're all bay horses. and they're all standardbreds, or they're all this, I need somebody to help me, show me the horses. Nope, you're on your own, she said. And I said, I'm not the enemy. I'm not the enemy.
Right.
I'm here to help you. So a lot of divorce cases, unfortunately, or that's an example. Litigation, malpractice, very sad cases when horses die. I've had a case years ago that many horses died from bad feed. Those, yeah. So, you just never know what the scenario might be. Fire, as I spoke earlier. It could be cases of, just a partnership. I've done a case up in New Hampshire once, and it was a partnership, and they were partners on the horse, and one wanted out, and the other one said he's worth this, and the other one said, no, he's worth that. So that could be a scenario as well.
Okay. And what are some tips if someone wants to find an appraiser? Obviously, they need somebody who's, gone through all of the training and everything. What's the best way to find one?
Call me up.
Yeah.
I'm just teasing. I'm going to give you my website. No, I think the way to do it is Google it. Go ahead and go on Google. And when you do call the appraiser, ask them for references. Can you give me a couple clients that you've worked with? Ask the right questions. If it's a lawsuit, obviously you want someone that can testify as an expert in the field. There's rules when an attorney will enter you to the court of whether you're deemed an expert in the field or not. So if it's that case, you want to ask, what's your experience for sure? Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that you can't go with someone that's learning or somebody that's new, but, really weigh out what's going to be in your best interest as the client.
For sure.
So I have a quick question about appraisals. Is it worth your time to do it ahead of a situation, or should you wait until you actually are asked or needed?
Wait, I'm not sure I understand the question.
So like for me, I had gotten my wedding rings appraised before I even submitted it to insurance or anything. Like I just knew I needed to have an appraisal. So should I do that ahead of time, or is it like when you buy a house, you get it done after you do the contracts, not prior to it?
That's a really good question. And I've had people in those scenarios where they go into in this case, it was a partnership. So they wanted to go into the partnership because one of them was the breeder and the other one was going to put up the money to fund this partnership. So we did the appraisal up front on the horses. Now, I can tell you, I can appraise a horse, and in my report, and this is a USPAP standard, it says the fair market value is subject to change within, a week or so, or a couple of days. And because, it's a live animal. One day this horse is running down the racetrack, running in the traverse, as we saw, at the racetrack. And the next day he bows a tendon or he gets injured. Right. So value can certainly change.
Okay.
So where you might see a scenario where someone would do it for perhaps they want to sell a horse and they really don't know where to start with the market. They want to really get a feel for where the market is, because when we also put in our reports, whether it's a regional market, a local market, a worldwide market, an international market, it really it depends. So often in my experience, it's been, unfortunately, it's when the crisis occurs.
Yeah.
But in insurance, a lot of times I do work with a lot of insurance companies. They want to know, okay, here you bought this horse for $6,000 and you're telling me you want to appraise him for $100.
Yes.
Why? That's a good scenario of why I would get called in.
Yeah, I have my insurance license. And so I do see that where, people buy a horse and then all of a sudden they want to up how much the insurance is on him. And we're like, okay, we're looking at his record and it's not really showing it. So tell us why.
Exactly. Yeah. And I always tell clients, look, when you buy a horse, start to build a little portfolio for that horse. Mm-hmm. Because, it's an asset. It's a horse that could, his full brother let's just say his full brother just won a major Grand Prix or that particular bloodline, so those are all things that weigh in on value.
Yeah, that's actually, I never even thought about that, but about like the lineage is making them. In racehorses, obviously, I think of that a lot. But on the riding side of things, I don't know that people put as much weight into the breeding and the parental lines as we do in the racehorses, right?
Well, you know where it comes up a lot in the quarter horse appraisals. So
Okay.
in quarter horse appraisals, you'll see, because there's some cases that are going on right now, which I'm not at liberty to talk about, but there's, the litigation is crazy, how long and how costly it is, but bloodlines are absolutely critical. Now, if you're appraising, let's just say a broodmare or a stallion, I had a case not too long ago, probably about a year ago, and the discrepancy in the value was just off the charts. But I had to prove in my report, I had to justify why this horse was, and it had to do with the bloodlines. And the bloodlines were the thing that substantiated the value, because this mare was out of one of the top breeding stallions in the country.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I wanted to switch gears and talk a little bit about the women's conference that you started.
Oh yeah, that was quite an endeavor, and let me tell you how I got the idea to do that. I was an executive director of a not-for-profit, and just for your listeners know, I've had 10 years in one as a therapeutic riding director. And then I was involved with literacy for 10 years, and then involved with another agency, always involved, as I said, in the not-for-profit world. And I was sitting in a meeting with probably about 45 executive directors, and a major funder said, okay, well, we're going to be cutting the funding unless you have community impact. And I thought to myself, well, reading doesn't have community impact. What does? I mean, that's huge. So I turned to my colleague and said to her, in the grant world, because we work, we write grants, there's something called an FTE. And when you write a grant, it's called a full-time equivalent. And you know how many hats you may wear. You're doing 10 full-time equivalents, even though you're only one person.
Yeah.
As a woman, right?
Yeah.
So you're doing all these. So I turned to her and I said, how many FTEs can one woman be? And she laughed. And I said, I got an idea. Let's do a conference that women can come and women can really recharge their batteries, because this was a time when funding was just drying up and everyone was, having to get rid of their staff, and they were trying to keep programming going. And it was a really tough time.